Okay, so I'm going to talk about basically what you do if you want to do an esport game. The introduction stuff. So this is me. My name is Ohad. I've started about 3 game studios so far, and I worked with big brands. I was the GM and the COO of Mytopia when we were acquired in 2010, and continued to run the studio for 2 more years. Grew a big team. I worked with all those companies that you see on the board, and I'm teaching in the academia game design. I'm currently a producer and game designer at Sidekick. It's a company that does VR and mobile games, and I'm working with Rovio and Dark Matter on new games. But I'm here because in 2014, a team and I started working on eSports, doing mobile. Back then, it was very hard to actually raise money because none of the investors actually knew what eSports means. And we had to go through a very large process of actually educating them about it. Just some art from the games that we did. So eSport, as everybody knows, is a subject that it's a genre that goes ballistic the past few years. It's becoming mainstream, and now everybody, mostly in our industry, know what it is and that there's a lot of money going in. I'm not going to dwell on those numbers. This is going to be a short presentation, so I want to keep to the basic. So this was the alternative title for the talk. So everybody talk about doing esports, but it's not that easy, because basically, what is an esport? And there's a lot of definitions going around, but this is my definition. So an esport is a popular, competitive real-time game that pits players against each other in a skill-based, time-boxed match. That's my definition. Okay? And we'll go through that. So the key point is that you cannot build an esport. You cannot build an esport title. You can build for esport. The people that decide if this is an esport or not are the players. If it becomes popular enough, it becomes a sport. Okay? What you can do is actually gear up to that point. So you can do a competitive, real-time, match-based game, and you can operate a community. But even then, that doesn't guarantee that this becomes an esport, even if you run a community well. So first thing first is, does your game fit to be an esport? So if we look at the game, we can identify 3 major factors that define games, all games. Okay, so first is the player skill. Okay? So the better the skill of the player, the better the outcome. The second is the unit skill. The better the unit you have, the better the outcome. And the last one is luck, how randomness affects your game. So we can build this as kind of a DNA. These are different DNAs of different games, and I'll go through them, and we'll see exactly what actually defines esport. So this is World of Warcraft. It has a large unit power, and the rest is smaller. This is StarCraft. So it's massively based on player skill, some unit power, and very, very little luck. Candy Crush, a lot of luck, some player skill, recognizing patterns. League of Legends, a lot of player skill, and again, not a lot of luck. This is Angry Birds. This is very typical to physics-based games. So there's some player skill, but it's not the majority. Puzzles and Dragons, and this is very typical for gacha games. It's mostly about unit power, but it also has a very massive luck element to it. And this is Hearthstone. So there's still a large amount of player skill, but there's also a large amount of luck. So it's very obvious that the big esports titles here are massively based on player skill. It's less obvious that Hearthstone, which is an esport, has dominance of player skill, but luck still plays a big role. This type of DNA also comes in a new game that wants to be an esports, and you probably know. Anyone recognize the game? Clash Royale, Supercell game. It's a new Supercell game in soft launch. And it's built for esports. Again, not sure it will be an esport, but they're gearing it up to it. They're building for it. So, skill curve is critical if you want to do an esport. And what does it do? So first, it allows players to develop unique techniques in the game and develop impressive strategies. It's something that viewers can watch and see how pro players develop over time into better ones, so they can relate to them as they begin and through their career. And again, it allows them to emerge and become known. And esports titles aspire to have an endless skill curve. So at the beginning, you put in a few amount of, small amount of times, and you become better very fast. But the more you play, the more time you need to put in to become better by small portions. So it's an endless skill curve. Now we're talking about real-time and competitive play. So it has to be competitive, okay? Because players versus players, so it can be 1-on-1 or 3-on-3 or 5-on-5. Any more than, I don't know, 7-on-7 becomes too big match, too long match. And again, this is what creates the fans. Okay, it allows the teams, it allows star players, and this is what creates the fans. The real time actually allows to bring all those people together at the same time, either in chats or in views, and actually discuss the game. This is what actually brings the fans together. Okay? The big events, tournaments, which you probably all know from eSports. So basically, those two elements are critical to create the drama that defines sports, any sports, not only game sports. Any sports has a drama element to it, and this is what brings it in. So this basically means that when you design games, you have to design for a sequence of dramatic events, and this is critical. This cannot be a non-stop action game. Okay? This cannot be continuous non-stop. It has to be paced. So break the action so players can have strategy, can stop and say, okay, now what my strategy is. And it allows shoutcasting, which is critical in esports. So basically, we mentioned time-boxed matches, but it's critical to have them because having fixed amount of time adds another strategy layer for players, and it also allows people to know how long they're going to sit. And for people that broadcast, and you remember, if it's esports, it's all about broadcasting. For broadcasters, it actually allows them to plan ahead, to know how long they're going to plan and how many matches they can do in a tournament and how long everything's going to last. Okay, and now things that are very critical for it to be a spectator sport, okay? You can have a very complex game if it's like single-player game, but if it's a spectator sport, basically it needs to have very clear success and failure condition. So if someone comes in and just want to watch the game, he knows that you put the ball in the basket, okay? As simple as that. The team that scores more balls in the basket wins. Okay, so very clear success and failure rules. Clear participants. So if you look at the board, it's very clear to see who participant and which team they belong to. Very clear game arena. And very clear sub goals. So these are things that advance the game, but they're not critical. You can't win by them. but it makes everything, like, gives you a very big amount of, a very large amount of points that can lead to winning by points, okay? What you can do with everything, like everything is clear rules and everything, it looks like, okay, there's no complexity. So you can bring in complexity using characters or bring units, the different abilities, and the amount of control and the way that the teams control the different units together, that's what brings complexity into the game. So the more you look at the game, the more you watch the game, you learn all the little bits and tricks, and you can actually have a bit deeper understanding of the game and see more drama in it. This results in an easy to learn and hard to master for players, and it results for more understandable sports for spectators. I'm going to touch on development priorities. I'm not going to go deep in that because we're kind of time-boxed ourselves. So first, make sure that your game actually works. There's nothing worse than actually going online, and if you're like 5-on-5 and one player drops. Just one player drops, kill the game for everyone. So basically, just first get everything to work properly. And this is a big, big fit. You have to have a clear game loop, so everybody knows exactly what to play and exactly what the process is. And it has to be balanced, mechanics and properties and everything. And of course, this is a process, okay? This is not something that you get, from the get-go. But it's a process, but this is the priorities that you need to go through. There's a very big, very good lecture by Young from Big Point, which I recommend. Just look for his name on YouTube. What I want to say in this slide is basically don't prioritize automatic contest features. Why? Because they emerge. This is a screenshot I took 2 weeks ago on Twitch. These guys basically ran a tournament on, this guy is called Hazen. It's a 2 instead of a Z. They grouped a couple of people together. They were all on Skype talking with each other. One of the guys broadcasted it. And they all, because there's no, right now in Clash Royale, there's no tournament mode or anything. You can't even play with your friend unless you're in the same guild. So what happened is that everybody left their clan, created a new clan of only the people that want to play. And what happens is that 2 players play, and after that they post their gameplay on the chat of the guild, and only then all the rest of the people can go in and watch it, okay? Because you can't watch it in real time. There's no spectator mode in real time right now in the game. But it doesn't matter, because they found a way to do it. On this side, they broadcasted a site called Chilengo. I'll look at, you'll see exactly the name afterwards, where they actually wrote down who plays against who. Okay? So they actually, this is like an emerging behavior. They actually created the whole tournament themselves. And this is another point, this actually brings to another point that you need to understand as developers. You have to understand the tools people use to broadcast. Okay? This means OBS. This means what computers they use, what, if they use the chat online, what tools do they use to bring the chat online? Do they have plugins or not? What computers they broadcast from? All that stuff you need to understand, because if they cannot broadcast your game, they simply won't play it. So this is the final tournament. You can see I have my Cups won, and it's a challenge premiere. So that's how they ran the tournament. Okay, this is completely emerging from the players themselves. Supercell didn't do anything here. It's actually very hard. I have to leave my clan in order to join a clan just for the tournament. And this is the real point. eSports is all about becoming a sport. It's all about the fans. Okay, so it's more about than just having a game. So running a good community is the factor. Okay. So it's all about viewership. It's about creating emotions in the fans, having them connect to the people they watch, having them connected to the players, and see the drama, okay? So you guys need to nurture this community and support people that become pro players, okay? Yesterday we heard here that Wargaming is also dedicated some of their money just to give to teams, you know, to play anything they want, just so they can build up viewership. So this is something most of us can't afford to pay something like that for players, but you need to help them become popular, so they will actually play your game. If this is done right, this is also can bring you a lot of users. So instead of just in mobile right now, the best way to get users is paid acquisition. If you do an eSport right, community will bring you enough viewers and enough downloads as it is. So it's much more than, running a community is much more than running a community anywhere else. You have to care about amateur players, and it's completely different than caring for the pro players. So you have to actually manage those two groups differently. You have to care for the viewer fans. So you have to have a spectator mode. You have to have, in features, I'm talking about not just as community management, you have to affect development for this, okay? It has to have a spectator mode. The content needs to be fit for viewership. Running on OBS, running on all the other software that is used for broadcasting. Either partnership that you have to do with, if you're a small developer and nobody knows you, then you have to partner with someone that actually is being known, so they can kind of lay some of their reputation on you, give you some street cred. Again, it's ESL, Twitch, working with streamer, working with YouTubers. You have to run or support tournaments, okay? So some of the tournaments that will happen, just as I showed now, will emerge from the community. So you can decide to be there or you can decide not to be there, but you need to be aware what's going on with your game, okay? One of the best sentences I can say about community management in esports is just be ready when they come, because you don't know if they are going to be, if the game is going to hit big, but be ready that if it's becoming big, you're there and you know how to handle it. As you probably heard in the conference before, it's very important to work very early with pro players as you develop the game, not in soft launch or whatever. You have to work with them as early as possible, the first playable version, so they can affect the game. You must be able to create wow moments. Wow moments is where a pro player takes your game and creates something that is extremely dramatic or no one else can do. And this is actually what, if you go to watch on YouTube, for example, if you go to any sport and you watch highlights, that's the highlights that you want to do. It's like something completely, unintended and something that shows like complete either luck or skill. Okay? If you can't create wow moments in your game, there's nothing to sell. So it can't be just like, okay, this is the proper way to play it. And pro players will play the game differently from your developers. So it's critical to have them play first. Try to game the system, okay? They're the ones that will create the wow moments, not your team. And also encourage sharing of knowledge in the community. So sometimes you do it, you share some knowledge, and sometimes you encourage other people. So takeaway points. So basically, your players decide if this is an esport or not. The best that you can do is do a really, really good competitive game. You have to allow a very long skill curve. That means you have to take care of the very pro players. So add like very small stuff that most players will never get to. But pro players can get to, become better, and use it. Okay? Clear game rules, visuals, balanced games, obviously. You have to work with pro players from the get-go, create wow moments, and support them with everything they need. though you have to remember there will be an emergence. You have to support the emergence of star players and fans, basically. And again, create content yourself and support others to create it. Basically, this lecture is kind of going deep into a lecture I already gave in Casual Connect, covering how to do fun-to-play games, which covers all games, including esports, but this is like specific on esports. There are more rules that I gave on how to make games better for watching, and you can watch it on YouTube. Questions?
Earlier you showed the skill base and the luck, how much it depends in the game. And I was wondering if you think that is beneficial for the game, if it depends a lot on luck, like Hearthstone, like it worked out for Hearthstone, but would it be beneficial, or would you not recommend it to other games?
The luck factor?
Yeah.
So luck factor is very hard to get right if you want to have things based on skill. So it's, unless you know exactly how to do it, I would focus on the skill curve. Luck can kill a game if not done right. And to be honest, the only way to do it right is actually work with players and see where it actually balances, because you need to make sure that it actually works the same for both parties, for the two players that actually compete. It's a very risky way to go. I can tell you that for me, for example, in Clash Royale, it actually works very well. Hearthstone obviously worked very well, but those are exceptions. If you look at most of the esports titles, they're like heavily skill-based. Okay, cool.
Well, thank you very much.